Story 1. He knew when I was home, even without lights, sound, or movement. The stalker doesn't need real-time visuals. The messages reveal an intimate knowledge of her habits, not just moments. When your own patterns become tools, you are being reconstructed. This happened to me in 2019, right after I moved into a second-floor apartment above a quiet bakery in northern Connecticut. I was living alone for the first time. The place was small, just one bedroom, but it was warm, clean, and quiet. Perfect for someone like me who worked night shifts and needed daytime silence. I ran the evening cleaning crew at a dental office in town. Most days, I got home around 11:30 p.m., ate something simple and went straight to bed. The first time I noticed something strange, it was small. A text message from an unknown number. It said, "Late dinner again?" I assumed it was spam, deleted it, moved on. The next night around the same time, 11:37 p.m., another message. This one said, "Microwave, then fridge, then couch." I stood still in the kitchen, hand on the fridge handle. My phone lit up again. And now, the fridge. It felt like someone had dropped a bucket of cold water over me. My first instinct was to run to the window, but I didn't. I just stood there, suddenly unsure of everything. Had I left a light on? Was the curtain open? Was someone in the hallway? I didn't move for almost 10 minutes. Then I turned off every light, pulled the curtains tight, and sat in the bedroom with my back against the wall. Nothing else happened that night. But the next night it continued. "You always start with your left shoe. Tied too tight tonight?" I didn't even remember doing it until I started checking the footage. I had a small camera inside the hallway of the dental office, and sure enough, every night when I changed shoes in the locker room, I did the left first. Every time. That's when I realized this wasn't someone watching me live. This was someone who already knew me, knew my rhythms, my routines. It was like I'd been mapped. Every movement, from the way I reached for the bathroom towel to the number of times I locked the front door, always 3, was being documented, predicted, and mirrored back at me. I stopped watching TV, stopped playing music. I walked more slowly, ate in the dark. But the messages didn't stop. They started referring to feelings. "You're tired tonight. Don't cry. It's not even cold." I never cried. I swear I didn't. But something about the way they said it, "Don't cry," made it worse than if they'd seen a tear. It felt like they were inside my skin. The texts always came at night, always during that same hour, right after I got home and thought I was safe. I changed my number, deleted every account, got a burner phone, and for a while, it worked. Silence. No messages for a week. Then one night, a note slid under my door. Just a torn piece of paper with 7 words. "You blink exactly 5 times before sleeping." That night, I didn't sleep. She tests it, whispers, "I'm not scared of you." The reply comes instantly. "You were louder last night. This is no longer surveillance. It's synchronization." By the time I installed the cameras, I'd already stopped trusting my own memory. They were motion activated, one outside the hallway window and one pointing down at my entry door. I set them to silent, no alerts, just passive recording. I was trying to live like nothing was happening. Then came the whisper. It started as a test. One night, around 1:30 a.m., I sat on the floor in the hallway with all the lights off. My phone off, no music. I whispered, "I'm not scared of you." And I waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I felt foolish, like I was feeding something that wasn't real. Then my burner phone buzzed. A single message. "You were louder last night." I hadn't said anything the night before, not out loud. That was the moment everything changed, because that wasn't observation. That was response. That was timing. Whoever they weren't just watching, they were there, listening, timing my breath. I started testing it again, whispered nonsense words, whispered song lyrics. Each time, a different reply. Wrong verse, slower than usual. That wasn't in key. I was afraid to speak, but silence didn't help either. The next message was even worse. You scratch your arm before you lie down. That one broke something in me, because I do that. Just before I sleep, I unconsciously run a finger along the inside of my arm. A habit from childhood. I never told anyone. Not even my last boyfriend noticed. I started recording myself while I slept, checked every frame. Nothing. Then one morning I woke up and found a cup of coffee sitting just inside the door. My brand, my mug, the one from the top shelf. The one I hadn't touched in weeks. I hadn't made it. There was no fingerprint, no note, just the smell of something familiar placed inside the boundary of my life. That's when I stopped whispering. Some experts believe persistent observation can create a psychological mirroring effect, as if the stalker's mental model becomes a secondary self. She stops responding. That's when the messages change tone. You're not you anymore. I stopped reacting. No replies, no whispers. I erased every mirror from the apartment and removed the batteries from all my devices. I didn't use lights. I stopped cooking. I even started leaving the TV on static just to disrupt the pattern. The silence grew thick. The first few nights there were no messages. Then came one, "You miss the couch." I hadn't sat on the couch in 3 weeks. I was sleeping on the floor with no blanket. The next message came later that week. "You used to hum after brushing your teeth." I didn't hum anymore. I didn't even brush at the sink. I did it in the dark with the faucet barely cracked. Then finally, "You're not you anymore." That one stayed with me. I kept staring at it like it was meant for someone else. It felt like disappointment, like whoever this was had lost interest. For a few days, nothing came. Then the messages started again. But they weren't about me. They were to me. "What did you dream last night? Is it worse being alone or being wrong? Would you rather forget this ever happened or know why it did?" I didn't answer. And then one night, the messages stopped entirely. That might sound like the best-case scenario, but it wasn't. It was worse, because silence after something like that isn't relief. It's suspension. It's the feeling that something's still there, but not showing itself. A month later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was my own handwriting, a journal entry, something I must have written during one of those sleep-deprived stretches, but don't remember at all. The first line read, "The scariest thing isn't being watched, it's being understood." I moved 2 weeks later, and still some nights I find myself whispering to no one, not to test, just to check. Story 2. The landlord said I was the only tenant, but I heard them breathing at night. Soundproofing absorbs randomness, not patterns. The breathing follows his own sleep cycle. When breath matches breath, fear enters through the lungs. This happened to me in 2020, the year I moved back to Massachusetts after a bad breakup and an even worse job collapse. I was 31, no savings, no furniture, no real plan, just a box of kitchenware and a duffel bag of clothes in the back of my car. I found the apartment on Craigslist, a one-bedroom above a closed-down bookstore in a dying town just west of Worcester. Rent was cheap. The listing said partially soundproofed, and ideal for artists or night workers. It was small but clean, faded green walls, low ceiling, worn carpet. It had that smell of old drywall, slightly sour but not unpleasant. The landlord met me in the parking lot. He was in his 70s, with a voice like dust and long yellowed fingernails. He told me it used to be a retail office and that the only other resident was a retired electrician who came once a week to check the roof access. He handed me the key, said, "You'll have the place to yourself." The first 2 weeks were fine. I spent most of my time fixing up the inside, unpacking, cleaning, sitting on the floor and watching shows on my laptop. I didn't even buy a couch. I just made a habit of sleeping on a thin mattress near the middle of the room where I could avoid the draft from the broken window seal. It started with a sound, very faint, like a breeze, but wetter, rhythmic, breathing. It wasn't from above. It wasn't footsteps or a ceiling fan. It was horizontal, almost level with my own chest, like someone was lying down, parallel to me, breathing slowly. I sat up. The sound stopped. It didn't return that night. The next night, it came back, just after 2 a.m. I'd already turned off the lights. I was half asleep, drifting, when I heard it again. Inhale, pause, exhale, again, and again. Just slow enough to seem intentional, just close enough to sound real. I flipped on the lamp. Nothing. I checked the closet, the tiny hallway, even tapped on the walls. No hollow spaces, no obvious ducts or vents. I turned off the light again. The breathing started again, but slower this time. Calmer, as if it knew I was listening. I told myself it was an old radiator, or maybe a neighbor's TV through a vent I hadn't found. But it was the rhythm that disturbed me, because over the next few nights, the breathing would change based on me. If I got up for water and came back, it would start again. If I tossed in bed, it would pause. If I stayed still long enough, it would return, slowly, calmly, like something was learning my rhythm. I decided to test it. One night, I drank coffee to stay up. I waited until 2:15 a.m., lying perfectly still in the dark. The sound began. I took a deep breath and held it. The sound did too. I exhaled slowly. So did it. I was no longer convinced it was a neighbor, because if someone breathes in perfect time with you, they're not just hearing you. They're with you. One night, he stays perfectly still, holds his breath. The sound pauses, then exhales exactly when he does. Not surveillance, imitation. I started sleeping with the lights on, not for fear of the dark, but because I needed something constant, something that wasn't reacting to me. The breathing had become routine, not every night, but most. Always around 2 a.m., always rhythmic, never rushed, and always so close. I called the landlord one afternoon. I said, "Are there vents connected to another unit or the roof?" He said no. The old HVAC had been shut down years ago. The roof was sealed. There was no attic, just insulation and crawl space. I asked if the building was shared. He paused, then said, "You're the only tenant." That night, I decided to confront it. I placed my mattress in the middle of the floor, turned off every device, sealed every light source, and lay flat on my back, staring at the ceiling. 2:11 a.m. The breathing started. I didn't move. 2:14 a.m. It got slower. I inhaled, quietly, deliberately. The breathing inhaled at the same time. I held my breath. The sound stopped. 10 seconds passed. 15. Then I exhaled, just a shallow puff. The breathing resumed, exhaling with me. I was no longer sure if I was the one breathing, or if something else was rehearsing my breath. I stayed that way for almost an hour, not moving, just listening, matching. Then something changed. It didn't exhale when I did. It paused longer than me, then suddenly, it inhaled sharply, loud, wet, as if it had been suppressing itself. I sat up. My spine felt electric. I turned on the lamp and stared at the empty space beside the mattress. Nothing. But the sound had moved. It was now coming from above, not like footsteps, not like a creak, just breathing. Above the ceiling tiles, directly over me. I stood on the dresser and pushed against the tile. It shifted slightly, then stopped. There was something pressing down, just enough weight to resist. I didn't move it, I just stepped down. The breathing stopped. Rare cases exist where stalkers live inside walls, ceilings, or storage spaces of their victims, feeding off routine and resonance. He finally climbs into the crawl space, finds empty food wrappers, and a notebook with every movement he's made since moving in. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? There's something breathing above me. I stopped sleeping at night. Worked late shifts, slept in short bursts during the day. But even then, around 2 p.m. now, I'd hear it. Quiet, labored, like someone had adapted to my new schedule. I started researching. There's a term for it, cohabitation stalking. extremely rare, involves a person secretly living inside the walls, attics or crawl spaces of someone else's residence, mirroring their patterns, surviving unnoticed, feeding off the routine. I didn't want to believe it, but then I noticed something else. Food was missing. Not a lot, just small things. A banana, a yogurt, one bottle of water. I thought I was imagining it, but I started keeping a notebook, logging every item, marking dates. Within 3 days, 2 items had gone missing that I hadn't touched. The apartment had no camera angles for the kitchen. The hallway was too narrow. The fridge door had no marks, no signs of tampering. And yet, I was no longer alone. The next night, I set a trap. I balanced a paper cup on the inside of the fridge handle, just high enough that opening it would cause it to fall. At 2:19 a.m., I heard a clatter from the kitchen. I didn't move, didn't go check, because above me, the breathing had returned. It hadn't gone toward the kitchen. It had come back into the crawl space, returned to its space. I called the landlord the next morning. I asked again about access to the ceiling. He hesitated, said, "There's an old maintenance hatch in the hallway. But it's just insulation, no room for anyone up there." I didn't believe him. That night I unscrewed the hatch. It opened slowly. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not mold, just air, human air, thick with salt, skin and breath. I climbed up. It wasn't just insulation. There was a space, maybe 2 feet high but wide. Boards laid across beams like a makeshift path. On one side, an old blanket. On the other, piles of wrappers, water bottles, apple cores, and a notebook. I picked it up. Inside, dates, times, descriptions, handwritten in small block letters. June 12th, microwave at 11:34 p.m. June 15th, cried for 6 minutes after phone call. June 18th, did not brush teeth before bed. Every page, every line, my life, my routines, my rhythms, my breath. There was no name, no signature, no photos, just entries. The final one, dated that morning, said, "He's coming up." That was the last line. I dropped the notebook and climbed down. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the door with my keys in my hand. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't take anything except my phone and a pair of shoes. I told the landlord I was taking a job in another state. He said, "But I thought you liked it here. So quiet." I didn't answer. I never filed a police report. Sometimes I still wonder, and if I'd waited one more night, would there have been a new entry? He found me, or worse, we breathed together. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. She only followed me after I stopped noticing her. He begins dreaming about her, not as a threat, but as his own thought. Fear becomes untraceable when it's mistaken for memory. This happened to me in 2021, during the final months of my commute-based job in downtown Chicago. At the time, I worked for a logistics firm on the west side. The office was sterile, open plan, and quiet, full of silent desks and fake plants. I'd take the Blue Line in every morning at 6:38 a.m. I'd leave around 5. My life had become mechanical, structured, predictable. I first saw her at the Rosemont station, standing beneath the platform shelter, half-shadowed, wearing a long grey coat and scuffed boots. Her hair was black, parted cleanly down the middle, and she held her phone like it was a dead object, not looking at it, just holding it. That first day, I didn't think much of her, but then she was there again the next morning, same spot, same coat, same posture. And again the next week. Each time I glanced at her, she never looked directly at me, always slightly to the side, not avoiding eye contact, just never giving it. It didn't feel strange, not yet. In cities, you learn to filter faces. The mind stops registering people unless they do something sudden. She didn't, she just stayed. 1 week turned into 2, then a month. At some point, I stopped checking for her. Her presence became background, like the scratch of subway wheels or the hiss of brakes, a part of the commute. Then I started dreaming about her, not vividly, just flashes. A coat turning at a corner, a hand holding a phone, that center-parted hair moving like paper underwater. But in the dreams, she was never a person. She was me. I was holding the phone, standing by the pillar, wearing the coat. I'd wake up and not remember the full sequence, just this strange sense of having seen myself from the outside. It wasn't fear, not exactly, just a kind of static discomfort, like being asked a question in a language you almost remember. I started noticing other things, small habits, new reflexes. I began crossing my arms the way she did. I started using the same phone grip, palm flat, thumb limp. I even bought a grey coat. Not because of her. I didn't think so. It just seemed familiar, comfortable. Then one morning I noticed something else. She wasn't at Rosemont, but when the train pulled into the next stop, she was there, already on the platform. Same coat, same posture, same unblinking stance, as if she'd gotten ahead of me. I turned around to check the train cars, empty. No one had exited. No one had passed me. That was the first time I felt real unease, because it wasn't that she was following me. It was that I couldn't tell when I had started following her. One morning, their eyes meet in a train reflection. She blinks, he hadn't yet. When your reflections stop obeying you, surveillance becomes identity erosion. I started taking different seats, switching train cars, boarding from different doors. She still appeared, sometimes across the aisle, sometimes outside the window, always in the periphery. I tried testing her. I'd get on 2 stops early, or wait for the next train entirely. She'd be there, never directly behind, never beside, but always where I'd least expect her, never moving, always still. I told myself it was coincidence, a commuter I'd attached meaning to. Maybe we just had overlapping schedules. Then one morning, I caught her watching me. It was a Thursday, cold, grey, barely past 6. I boarded late and had to stand near the sliding door, right in front of the reflective window panel. The train was packed. As we pulled away from the Jefferson Park station, the lights inside the train flickered, and in that moment I saw her reflection behind me. Not her directly, her image. She was seated in the far left corner of the car, next to a man reading the paper. She hadn't blinked. I stared into the glass, pretending to look past myself. I thought, I'm going to blink, then she'll blink too. I counted down in my head and blinked. In the reflection, she blinked first, half a second before me. Not a flinch, not a delayed mimic, a preemptive blink, like she'd known. I turned to look, but she wasn't there. The seat was empty. The paper-reading man was gone. I scanned the whole car. Nothing. I sat down, dizzy. I didn't speak to anyone that day. I left work early. That night, I sat in the dark for hours, trying to remember what her face looked like. Not in detail, but in expression. I couldn't. I remembered the coat, the boots, the posture. But her face? It was always vague, fuzzy around the mouth, like a smudge in a photograph. That week, I stopped taking the train, took Ubers, walked, stayed late at work to avoid rush hour. But the dreams returned. This time she wasn't standing. She was watching me from inside windows, inside mirrors, not moving, just watching. And when I turned away, I could still see her, as if my eyes had internalized her outline, like she wasn't outside me anymore. She was in the image my brain used to define me. Some researchers believe long-term exposure to a silent observer can create cognitive bleed, an echo of the watcher inside the watched. He quits commuting, moves cities, and finds a subway ad with her face. Only the tagline reads, "You're not imagining me." I left Chicago in March, resigned from the job, sublet the apartment, packed everything into storage, moved to Pittsburgh. No family, no connections, just enough savings to rent a studio downtown and find temp work. No trains. I walked everywhere. The first few weeks I felt relief. No sightings, no strange reflections, no breathing behind glass. But then something subtle started happening. I began seeing the coat again. Not her, just the coat, in store windows, in alleyways, on mannequins that hadn't been there the day before, always that same grey, always the same length, faintly dusted. I found myself repeating small motions, crossing my legs a certain way, holding my phone at a new angle, brushing my hair with the wrong hand. I was reassembling her. Without noticing, it was like I'd been reprogrammed. Then one morning, I passed the Wood Street subway entrance. I hadn't been down there once, but as I walked by, I saw an ad. It was backlit, simple, one of those local campaigns they run to promote city infrastructure or mental health awareness. But the photo stopped me cold. It was her, not posed, not airbrushed, just a still image, candid, almost accidental. Same hair, same coat, same unblinking stare, and the tagline below, "You're not imagining me." I don't know how long I stood there. People passed. Some glanced at the poster. No one reacted. It wasn't a company, no brand, no sponsorship text, just her face. I walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I disconnected my phone, turned off all screens, closed every curtain. At 2:19 a.m., I looked into the bathroom mirror, and I blinked. My reflection didn't.